The day Zachary slid the power of attorney papers across my mahogany dining table was the day I realized my own son thought I was a fool. I watched his manicured fingers tap impatiently against the antique wood my late husband Jasper had imported from Brazil 40 years ago. My son's eyes didn't meet mine. They never did when he was lying. And his voice carried that patronizing tone he'd perfected since becoming CEO of Blackwood Technologies. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Mother, it's just a precaution. At 70, you shouldn't be burdened with all these financial decisions. He pushed the pen closer to my hand. Dad would have wanted me to take care of you. I nearly laughed. If Jasper were here, he'd have shown Zachary the door before he finished his sentence. My husband didn't raise our son to be a vulture, yet here he was, circling what he thought was easy prey. Instead, I smiled. The same smile I'd perfected over decades of being underestimated. By men in boardrooms across 3 continents. Of course, darling. You're so thoughtful. I signed with a flourish, my signature as elegant as it had been at 30. What Zachary didn't know as he tucked those papers into his Italian leather briefcase was that I'd been preparing for this moment since I caught him examining my investment portfolio 3 months ago. After all, a woman doesn't build a fortune spanning 60 countries by being naive. I am Dorothea Blackwood, though I've always preferred Thea. At 70, I've lived long enough to recognize when someone believes I've outlived my usefulness. When my husband Jasper died 5 years ago, he left me as the majority shareholder of Blackwood Technologies, a company we built from nothing in our garage in 1978 to the international conglomerate it is today. The company that created the Blackwood encryption protocol that revolutionized digital security and made us billionaires. Our son Zachary was 17 when we had our first major breakthrough. He grew up watching wealth accumulate around him, rather than participating in its creation. There's something fundamentally different about those who build versus those who inherit. Jasper knew this, which is why our son received only a 20% stake in the company upon his father's death, while I retained 51%, that remaining 29%. It sits in a trust that Zachary believes goes to him upon my death. He's been waiting, not so patiently. The morning of my 70th birthday celebration at Ravenhurst Manor, our family estate in New England, I watched Zachary through the window as he instructed the staff where to place flower arrangements. His wife Phoebe trailed behind him, apologizing to each worker he berated. She caught my eye through the window and offered a small, sad smile. I've always wondered if she regrets marrying my son. Smart woman, terrible taste. You look stunning. Thea, my sister Wilhelmina said as she entered my suite. At 65, Mina was still as sharp as the vintage Dior suits she favored. That shade of emerald makes you look positively regal. Regal or ancient? I adjusted my jade earrings, a gift from Jasper after our first million. Mina scoffed. Please, you're aging like that ridiculously expensive wine Jasper used to hoard. Chateau Lafite Rothschild, I smiled at the memory. He claimed it appreciated faster than our stock portfolio. He wasn't wrong. Mina's expression turned serious. Have you told Zachary yet? I smoothed an invisible wrinkle from my dress. About stepping down from the board? No. I thought I'd give myself a birthday present and watch his face when I announce it tonight. What I didn't tell Mina was that my resignation was a carefully calculated move in a game Zachary didn't know we were playing. For months, he'd been bringing up my forgetfulness in front of board members, scheduling meetings last minute knowing I'd be visiting my grandchildren, questioning my decisions publicly. Small things, easily dismissed individually, but together, they painted a picture of an aging woman losing her grip. He wanted control, and tonight I would give him exactly what he wanted, or so he would think. The party was extravagant, of course. 200 guests filled the ballroom of Ravenhurst Manor. Politicians, celebrities, and tech moguls mingled under crystal chandeliers that had hung there since the Roaring '20s. I recognized perhaps half the guests. The rest were Zachary's. Connections, younger, hungrier, dressed in clothes that cost more than my first house. Grandmother. My granddaughter Eliza broke protocol and rushed to embrace me. At 16, she was the spitting image of me at that age. Fierce eyes and a sharper mind. Happy birthday, I've missed you so much. I hugged her tightly, breathing in the scent of her floral perfume. I've missed you too, my darling. How's the coding project coming along? Her eyes lit up. I finished it. I used some of Grandfather's old algorithms as inspiration, but I made improvements to the compression sequence that... Eliza, Zachary's voice cut in. Don't bore Grandmother with technical details. It's her birthday. I felt her stiffen in my arms. She's not boring me, I said, my voice pleasant but firm. In fact, I was thinking she might like to intern at the Zurich office this summer. Zachary's smile didn't reach his eyes. We'll discuss that later, Mother. The senator is waiting to speak with you. As the evening progressed, I played my role perfectly. The grateful matriarch, occasionally appearing slightly overwhelmed by the attention, accepting Zachary's guiding arm with practiced gratitude. When he clinked his glass for the toast, I allowed a slight tremor in my hand as I raised my champagne. To my remarkable mother, Zachary's voice carried across the ballroom. For 70 years of wisdom, grace, and tremendous business acumen, Blackwood Technologies wouldn't exist without her and my late father's vision. Applause filled the room. I caught Mina's eye across the crowd. She nodded almost imperceptibly. Thank you, Zachary. I rose from my seat, my voice strong despite the slight stoop I'd adopted for the evening. I'm overwhelmed by this beautiful celebration. Reaching 70 has made me reflective. Jasper and I built this company from nothing, through recessions and technological revolutions. We weathered storms that sank our competitors. I paused, letting my gaze sweep across the room. But every journey reaches its conclusion. That's why tonight, I'm announcing my resignation as chairwoman of Blackwood Technologies, effective immediately. The room erupted in murmurs. Zachary's face registered perfect shock before quickly rearranging into concern. Only Mina and I knew it. Was the shock of a predator whose prey had just walked willingly into its jaws. Mother, he stepped forward, taking my elbow gently. This is unexpected. Are you certain? Absolutely, I smiled warmly at the crowd. It's time for new blood. Zachary has been practically running things already. I'm just making it official. The applause that followed was thunderous. My son's grip on my elbow tightened momentarily before he released me to accept congratulations from the board members who had already started gravitating toward him. The new center of power. Later, that night after the guests had departed and the staff was cleaning up, I sat at my vanity removing my jewelry. A soft knock at the door preceded Phoebe's entrance. May I come in, Thea? Her voice was hesitant, as always. Of course, dear. I watched her reflection in the mirror, beautiful in an understated way, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Did you enjoy the party? She closed the door quietly behind her. It was lovely, but I wanted to check on you. That announcement was surprising. I turned to face her directly. Was it? I thought Zachary would be pleased. He is. Her fingers twisted nervously. Very pleased. I want to make sure you're doing this for the right reasons. I took her hands in mine, stilling their anxious movement. Phoebe, I've made my decision. Now, how are things with you? You seem tired. Her eyes darted to the door. I'm fine. Zachary's been under pressure with the Singapore expansion. It makes him tense. I'd seen the bruises she tried to hide. Under long sleeves, even in summer. My dear, if you ever need anything at all, you come to me. Understood? She nodded quickly, too quickly, then stood. I should go. Zachary will be wondering where I am. After she left, I opened my safe and removed a small leather-bound journal. Jasper's private record of accounts, contacts, and secrets. I traced his handwriting with my finger, remembering how he'd placed this book in my hands a week before. His heart failed him. Thea, he'd said, a man builds walls to protect what's precious. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But a smart woman knows how to slip between them. Promise me you'll remember that. At the time, I thought he was being poetic. Later, I realized he was warning me. The next morning, Zachary didn't wait. He arrived at breakfast with documents for me to sign, consolidating accounts, transferring properties, updating the corporate governance structure. All perfectly logical steps given my resignation. These all seem in order, I said, signing where indicated without reading the fine print. I could practically hear Jasper rolling in his grave. Excellent, Zachary tucked the papers away. I've also taken the liberty of having Jeffries come by this afternoon to discuss simplifying your personal finances. After yesterday's excitement, I'm concerned about the strain of managing all these accounts. Jeffries was Zachary's personal accountant, a nervous man with shifting eyes who'd always seemed afraid of me. I wondered how long he'd been helping my son prepare for this moment. That's thoughtful, darling. But I already have an appointment. With my hairdresser. Perhaps tomorrow? Zachary's jaw tightened momentarily. Mother, this is important. I can have Henri come to the house instead. I sighed, allowing a note of resignation to enter my voice. Very well, if you insist. By the end of the week, Zachary had, on paper at least, control of almost everything. My checking accounts, my investment portfolio, the properties in Aspen and Malibu, even my beloved vineyard in Sonoma. I signed everything with apparent resignation, occasionally asking questions just difficult enough to maintain my dignity, but not sharp enough to raise suspicion. What he didn't know was that these assets, while substantial, represented less than a third of my actual wealth. The real fortune, the one Jasper and I had built through decades of strategic investments, was safely distributed through a network of accounts, shell companies, and trusts that didn't appear on any paperwork. Zachary had access to, and at the center of it all, 3 Swiss bank accounts established in 1987, back when banking secrecy was Switzerland's most famous export. On Sunday evening, Zachary and Phoebe came for dinner. I noticed how he now sat at the head of the table without asking, Jasper's chair, then mine, now his. Phoebe kept her eyes on her plate as he detailed his plans for the company. The board has approved my restructuring proposal, he announced, cutting into his steak with surgical precision. We're streamlining operations, cutting the fat, so to speak. How interesting, I murmured, knowing exactly what cutting the fat meant. Zachary had already tried to eliminate the charitable foundation I'd established years ago, arguing it was an unnecessary drain on resources. I've also decided to sell the Zurich office, he continued. It's underperforming, and maintaining a European headquarters is an outdated concept in the digital age. My pulse quickened. The Zurich office was more than a headquarters. It was my connection to Lucian Ambrose, the financial advisor who had helped Jasper and me establish our Swiss accounts decades ago. More importantly, it housed servers containing backup encryption keys that Zachary knew nothing about. That seems hasty, I remarked, keeping my voice neutral. Your father always valued our European presence. Zachary's smile was condescending. Dad had a sentimental attachment to Zurich because of your honeymoon. Business decisions shouldn't be based on nostalgia. I nodded, conceding the point while my mind raced. I would need to act sooner than planned. By the way, he added casually, I've arranged for a live-in nurse to start tomorrow. Nothing to worry about, just some help around the house. Ms. Chen comes highly recommended. A nurse? I set down my fork. Zachary, that's absurd. I'm perfectly capable. Mother, he interrupted, his voice firm but gentle, as though speaking to a child. You forgot our lunch appointment last Tuesday. Your housekeeper tells me you've been misplacing things. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but at your age, these can be early warning signs. I had forgotten that lunch deliberately, just as I had strategically misplaced items where the housekeeper would notice. Small breadcrumbs leading Zachary exactly where I wanted him. Still, the nurse was an unexpected development. I don't need a stranger in my home, I protested, allowing a quaver in my voice. Imogen is lovely, Phoebe interjected softly. She's closer to a companion than a nurse. Please, Thea, just give her a chance. I looked at my daughter-in-law's pleading eyes and wondered if she was genuinely concerned or if Zachary had coached her. Either way, I knew when to concede a battle to win the war. Fine, I sighed, but just for a trial period. After they left, I called Mina. Zachary's moving faster than anticipated. He's selling the Zurich office and has hired a nurse to watch me. That's Snake, Mina hissed. Should we accelerate the plan? Not yet, I replied, moving to the window to ensure Zachary's car had truly left the property. First, I need to assess this nurse. She could complicate things. Imogen Chen arrived promptly at 8 a.m. the next morning. She was younger than I expected, perhaps mid-30s, with a calm demeanor and observant eyes that missed nothing. She wore simple, practical clothing and carried a small suitcase. Mrs. Blackwood, she bowed slightly in greeting. I'm Imogen. It's an honor to meet you. I studied her carefully. My son seems to think I need supervision. A flicker of something, amusement, crossed her face. Mr. Blackwood has asked me to provide companionship and assistance, nothing more. Well, Imogen, let me be clear. I don't need a babysitter, and I value my privacy. If we're to coexist peacefully, those boundaries must be respected. Of course, she replied smoothly. May I ask where you'd like me to place my things? I directed her to the guest suite farthest from my master bedroom. As she unpacked, I called Lucienne in Zurich, keeping my voice low. Zachary's selling the office, I said without preamble. How quickly can you secure the servers? Lucienne's French accent was thick with concern. 2 days, perhaps 3. He's already sent his people to audit our systems. Move faster, I instructed. And Lucienne? Activate Protocol Nightingale. Thea, his voice softened. Are you certain? Once initiated. I'm certain. My son has made his intentions clear. Over the next week, I observed Imogen carefully. She was efficient, respectful, and infuriatingly difficult to read. She helped with my correspondence, organized my medication, vitamins and mild blood pressure pills, nothing more, and somehow anticipated my needs before I expressed them. More concerning, she seemed to notice everything, including my late-night phone calls and the private journal I kept locked in my desk. On Friday morning, she brought tea to my study as I reviewed some personal papers. I had deliberately left out financial statements from my known accounts, the ones Zachary now controlled. Your son called, she mentioned casually. He asked if you needed anything from the store. I looked up, gauging her expression. How thoughtful. Did he ask anything else? He inquired about your sleep patterns and whether you'd been taking your medication regularly. She placed the tea beside me. I informed him you've been sleeping well and following your regimen precisely. I see. And do you report to my son daily, Imogen? She met my gaze directly. Mr. Blackwood calls each morning for updates on your well-being. I provide factual information only. I nodded, returning to my papers. You may tell him I slept poorly last night, worried about money, perhaps. Her eyebrow raised slightly. Would that be accurate? No, I smiled. but it might be interesting to see his response. That afternoon, Zachary appeared unannounced, concern etched on his features. "Mother, Imogen mentioned you were anxious about finances. You know that's unnecessary. I'm handling everything." I feigned embarrassment. "Did she say that? How mortifying. I simply mentioned missing your father's financial acumen. He always made me feel so secure." Zachary sat beside me, patting my hand. "That's why I'm here, to provide that same security." "I know, darling." I squeezed his hand. "I suppose I'm just adjusting to this new arrangement." His phone buzzed. Glancing at it, his expression shifted subtly. "I need to take this. Business emergency." After he left, I found Imogen in the kitchen preparing dinner. I watched her. Efficient movements. The way she handled the chef's knife with unusual precision. "You weren't hired for your nursing credentials, were you, Imogen?" I asked quietly. She continued chopping vegetables without looking up. "I have multiple certifications, Mrs. Blackwood." "I'm sure you do. Tell me, does my son expect daily written reports, or is verbal sufficient?" Her knife paused momentarily. "Mr. Blackwood has his expectations. I have my professional ethics." Intriguing distinction, I noted. I wonder which will prevail when they inevitably conflict. She finally looked up, her dark eyes unreadable. Perhaps that depends on which obligations prove more compelling. It wasn't an answer, but it was illuminating nonetheless. Imogen Chen was no ordinary nurse. The question was whether she could be trusted, or at least predicted. That night, I received an encrypted email from Lucian. "Nightingale singing. Celestine prepared. Waiting your arrival." Everything was in place. Now I needed to get to Switzerland without raising alarms. No small feat with a watchful nurse and a son monitoring my every move. But I hadn't survived 7 decades in the cutthroat world of technology by being easily outmaneuvered. The next morning I made my move. I decided to test Imogen first. If she was truly reporting my every move to Zachary, I needed to understand exactly what information flowed between them. At breakfast, I deliberately knocked over my teacup, sending Earl Grey streaming across the antique tablecloth. Oh dear. I fumbled with my napkin, allowing my hands to tremble more than usual. How clumsy of me. Imogen was at my side instantly, steady hands cleaning the spill with practiced efficiency. "No harm done, Mrs. Blackwood." "My mind isn't what it used to be," I said, injecting a note of distress into my voice. "Sometimes I feel confused." Her dark eyes assessed me carefully. "Everyone has moments of distraction. This is more than distraction." I lowered my voice conspiratorially. "Yesterday I couldn't remember where I put Jasper's watch. The gold one, his favorite. I looked everywhere." This was a fabrication, of course. Jasper's watch was safely stored in my jewelry vault, exactly where it had been since his funeral. "Would you like me to help you look for it?" she offered. "Would you? It's probably nothing, but it would ease my mind." Throughout the morning, I watched as Imogen methodically searched the house, starting with my bedroom and moving outward. She was thorough but respectful, replacing items exactly as she found them. More interestingly, she didn't immediately report the missing watch to Zachary. I monitored her phone usage carefully. Around noon, I discovered the watch in my study drawer. "How silly of me. It was here all along," I exclaimed with calculated relief. Imogen's expression revealed nothing. "I'm glad you found it, Mrs. Blackwood." "Please, call me Thea. Mrs. Blackwood makes me feel ancient." She hesitated, then nodded. "Thea." That afternoon, I requested a drive into town. I'd like to visit my favorite bookshop. "Would you accompany me, Imogen?" "Of course." She helped me into my cashmere coat, though I needed no assistance. The drive to Whitby's Books took us along the coastal road, with its sweeping views of the Atlantic. I gazed out the window, appearing lost in thought while carefully monitoring Imogen's driving patterns. She was skilled behind the wheel, too skilled for an ordinary nurse. "Did you serve in the military, Imogen?" I asked casually. Her hands tightened imperceptibly on the steering wheel. "What makes you ask that?" "The way you drive. Precise, alert. My husband's security detail drove similarly." A small smile touched her lips. "I grew up with brothers who raced cars. Old habits die hard." At the bookshop, I browsed lazily, selecting a few mystery novels and a biography of Catherine the Great. Imogen remained close, but unobtrusive. When the shop owner greeted me by name, I engaged him in animated conversation about his recent trip to Greece, watching from the corner of my eye as Imogen surveyed the store's layout, noting exits and sightlines. Definitely not just a nurse. As we prepared to leave, I deliberately left my purse on the counter. We were halfway to the car when I patted my pockets in mock distress. "My purse! I must have left it inside." "I'll get it," Imogen responded instantly, turning back toward the shop. The moment she disappeared inside, I slipped a prepaid mobile phone from my coat pocket and sent a quick text to Lucian. "Watched closely. Accelerate timeline. 3 days." I had just returned the phone to my pocket when Imogen emerged, my purse, in hand. Her expression revealed nothing, but I sensed she knew something had transpired in her brief absence. That evening, Zachary called to inform me he would be stopping by the following morning. "Just to check in," he said, his voice suspiciously cheerful. "I have some papers for you to sign regarding the Zurich property sale." I feigned enthusiasm. "Wonderful, darling. I'll have Cook prepare those scones you love." After hanging up, I watched Imogen as she arranged my medications for the evening. "My son is visiting tomorrow," I remarked. "Did he mention that to you during your morning report?" She didn't look up. "Mr. Blackwood communicates his schedule directly to you. As appropriate." "Indeed. Yet somehow you always seem to know when to expect him." This time she met my gaze. "Anticipating needs is part of my job, Thea." "And whose needs are you anticipating exactly?" The question hung between us, unanswered. That night, I waited until the house was silent before making my way to Imogen's suite. The door was ajar, a deliberate invitation, or merely carelessness. I pushed it open to find her sitting fully dressed in an armchair, reading by lamplight as though she'd been expecting me. "Trouble sleeping?" she asked without looking up from her book. "I think it's time we were honest with each other, don't you?" She closed her book slowly. "What kind of honesty are you seeking?" "Let's start with your actual qualifications. You're no ordinary nurse." Imogen considered me for a long moment, then gestured to the chair opposite hers. I sat, arranging my silk robe around me with dignity. "I am a certified nurse practitioner," she said finally. "But I also have additional training in personal security." "My son hired you to spy on me." It wasn't a question. "Mr. Blackwood hired me to ensure your safety and report any concerning behavior." "Concerning to whom? Him or me?" A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "That's the interesting question, isn't it?" I leaned forward. "Imogen, I'm going to ask you something directly, and I expect an equally direct answer. Are you reporting everything I do to my son?" She met my gaze unflinchingly. "No. I report what I believe is relevant to your health and safety." "And who defines what's relevant?" "My professional judgment." I studied her carefully. Either she was an exceptional liar, or there was more to her assignment than simple surveillance. "Why did you really accept this position, Imogen?" Something flickered in her dark eyes, something I couldn't quite identify. "Let's just say I have my reasons for wanting to understand the Blackwood family dynamics." Cryptic, but intriguing. I rose from the chair. "Get some rest, Imogen. Tomorrow promises to be eventful." As I turned to leave, she spoke again. Mrs. Blackwood, Thea, whatever game you're playing with your son, be careful. He's more dangerous than you realize. I paused at the doorway. My dear, I've been outmaneuvering dangerous men since before you were born, but I appreciate the concern. Morning brought Zachary promptly at 9, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. He kissed my cheek perfunctorily before setting his briefcase on the dining table. You're looking well, Mother, he observed, his eyes scanning me for any signs of decline he could leverage. Is that a new cardigan? This old thing? I've had it for years. A subtle reminder that my memory was intact, despite his attempts to suggest otherwise. He smiled tightly. How forgetful of me. Imogen, could you bring us some coffee? Mother and I have business to discuss. The dismissal was obvious. Imogen nodded and retreated to the kitchen, though I noticed she left the door slightly ajar. I've finalized the sale of the Zurich office, Zachary announced, sliding papers across the table. The contract just needs your signature as co-founder. I took the documents, skimming them with the practiced eye of someone who had negotiated billion-dollar deals for decades. The sale price seems low. The property has appreciated significantly since we purchased it. Irritation flashed across his face. The commercial real estate market in Switzerland is soft right now. Besides, we're selling to a longtime business associate who's doing us a favor by taking it off our hands quickly. I recognized the buyer's name immediately, Viktor Krasnov, a Russian tech investor with questionable connections who had been trying to get access to our encryption technology for years. Jasper had always refused to do business with him. Viktor Krasnov, I mused. Wasn't he investigated for corporate espionage a few years ago? Zachary's jaw tightened. Those allegations were never proven. He's a respected businessman now. If you say so, darling. I picked up the pen, hovering it over the signature line. Although I do wonder why we're rushing this sale when the market is, as you say, soft. Mother? His voice took on that patronizing tone I'd grown to despise. The Zurich office is a relic of a bygone era. The tax advantages no longer justify the overhead. Trust me, this is the right decision. I signed with deliberate slowness, watching Zachary's impatience build. There you are. I suppose that's one less thing for me to worry about. Relief washed over his features as he tucked the papers safely away. Exactly. Now there's one other matter we should discuss. Your health. This was it. The move I'd been anticipating. My health? I feel fine, Zachary. Of course you do. He patted my hand condescendingly. But Imogen has noticed some concerning patterns, misplaced items, moments of confusion, sleep disturbances. So she had been reporting to him after all. I filed that information away, keeping my expression neutral. Everyone my age has senior moments, darling. Naturally. But as a precaution, I've scheduled you for a cognitive assessment next week with Dr. Lancaster. He's the best geriatric specialist on the East Coast. I allowed myself to appear mildly affronted. That seems excessive. It's just a baseline evaluation, he assured me. Better to be proactive. Dad would have wanted us to take every precaution with your well-being. Invoking Jasper was a calculated move, one that confirmed my suspicions about Zachary's ultimate goal. If he could get a doctor to document cognitive decline, he could petition the court for full guardianship, giving him control over everything, including any assets he hadn't yet discovered. Very well, I conceded with a sigh. If it will put your mind at ease. After Zachary left, Imogen brought fresh tea to my study. I glanced up from my book, my expression deliberately neutral. So you've been reporting my moments of confusion to my son. She set the teacup down carefully. I reported factual observations as required. Including the missing watch incident? An event which, coincidentally, occurred less than 24 hours ago, yet my son already knew about it. Her expression remained impassive. Mr. Blackwood called this morning before his visit. He asked specifically if you had experienced any memory issues. And you felt compelled to share that information. I answered his direct question truthfully. I sipped my tea, considering her. Tell me, Imogen, has it occurred to you that your observations might be used to declare me incompetent? To strip me of my autonomy? Something shifted in her gaze. A flicker of discomfort, perhaps even guilt. My reports are clinical and objective. How they're used is beyond my control. Is it? We always have choices about the information we share, and how we present it. I set my cup down with a decisive clink. For instance, right now, I'm choosing not to share with you that I've already anticipated this move of Zachary's and have countermeasures in place. Her eyebrow arched slightly. And why would you share that with me? Because, my dear, I suspect you're more than what you appear to be, and I believe in hedging my bets. That evening, I placed a call to an old friend, Judge Eleanor Harrington, who had served on the corporate law circuit during Blackwood Technology's early patent disputes. Now semi-retired, she still wielded considerable influence. Thea. What a delightful surprise. Her warm voice brought memories of courthouse strategy sessions and celebratory dinners. Eleanor, I find myself in need of discreet legal counsel. I explained the situation, Zachary's increasing control, the upcoming cognitive assessment, my suspicions about his ultimate intentions. The old incompetent elderly parent play, Eleanor sighed. Unfortunately common when significant assets are involved. Have you documented his actions? Meticulously, I assured her. But I need time. The assessment is scheduled for next Tuesday. I'll reach out to Lancaster myself, she replied. He's an old golf buddy of my late husband's. I can't guarantee anything, but I might be able to delay the evaluation. That would be tremendously helpful. There's something else. I hesitated, weighing how much to reveal. I need to travel. Abroad, urgently and discreetly. There was a pause on the line. Zurich, she asked knowingly. I smiled. Eleanor had always been perceptive. You remember, Jasper wasn't exactly subtle about his admiration for Swiss banking practices. Her tone turned serious. Thea, be careful. If Zachary suspects you're moving assets beyond his reach. He won't know until it's too late, I assured her. But I need a legitimate reason to travel that won't arouse suspicion. Leave. That to me, she said after a moment. The International Women in Technology Conference is happening in Geneva next week. As a pioneering female founder, your presence has been requested to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award. Is that so? I chuckled. It will be by tomorrow morning, she promised. Official invitation, press release, the works. Even Zachary wouldn't deny you that recognition. The optics would be terrible. After hanging up, I found Imogen in the hallway, presumably just passing by. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental. Eavesdropping, Imogen? I asked mildly. She didn't bother denying it. You're planning to leave the country. I've been invited to receive an award. Quite prestigious. And the timing is purely coincidental? I smiled. In my experience, there are very few coincidences in life. Only opportunities recognized and seized. She studied me with those inscrutable dark eyes. Mr. Blackwood won't allow it, not with the cognitive assessment scheduled. Allow? I drew myself up to my full height, channeling the authority that had once intimidated boardrooms full of men. I may be 70, Imogen, but I am not a child seeking permission. I'm going to Switzerland next week. The only question is whether my son chooses to support that decision gracefully or make a public spectacle opposing it. The next morning brought the official invitation to the International Women in Technology Conference, delivered by courier in an impressive foil-embossed envelope. Eleanor had outdone herself. The invitation was flawlessly executed, complete with a personal note from the organization's chairwoman. I left it prominently displayed on the entry table, where Zachary would see it when he arrived for our scheduled lunch. Sure enough, his eyes landed on it immediately. "What's this?" he asked, picking up the envelope. "Oh, just a little recognition from the IWIT," I replied modestly. "They're presenting me with a Lifetime Achievement Award next week in Geneva." His expression darkened. "Next week? Impossible. You have the appointment with Dr. Lancaster." "That can be rescheduled," I waved dismissively. "This is a tremendous honor, Zachary. The press release went out this morning." He pulled out his phone, quickly searching for the announcement. Finding it, his frown deepened. "Mother, while I appreciate the recognition, your health must take priority. I'm sure they can mail the award." I fixed him with a steely gaze. "Zachary, consider the optics. Your elderly mother, a pioneering woman in technology, too frail to accept a prestigious international award. What would that suggest about how the Blackwood family values women's contributions?" He flinched. Public perception had always been his Achilles heel. "Besides," I continued smoothly, "I've already accepted. Declining now would be embarrassing for everyone." His jaw worked as he calculated his options. "Fine," he said finally. "But you're not traveling alone. Imogen will accompany you." "Of course," I agreed, perhaps too quickly. "I welcome her assistance." Suspicion flickered in his eyes. "And you'll fly directly back after the ceremony for the rescheduled assessment." Naturally. The lie came easily. Once in Switzerland, I had no intention of returning until my plans were fully executed. After Zachary left, I found Imogen in the garden, pruning roses with surprising skill. "Pack your bags," I informed her. "We're going to Switzerland." She snipped a thorny stem with precise force. "So I heard. Does that concern you?" She selected another stem for cutting. "My job is to ensure your safety and well-being wherever you go." "And to report my activities to my son," I added. Her shears paused. "That aspect of my role might be complicated by international travel." "How unfortunate for Zachary," I remarked dryly. She turned to face me fully, eyes narrowed slightly. "What are you really planning, Thea?" I plucked a perfect red rose from her basket, inhaling its scent. "To accept an award, naturally. What else could it be?" The days before departure passed in a flurry of preparation. Zachary insisted on handling all the travel arrangements: first-class tickets on Swiss Air, reservations at the Beau Rivage in Geneva, a car service for the duration of our stay. His control extended to our itinerary, which he had printed and laminated, with minimal free time built in. "The conference is on Thursday," he explained, reviewing the schedule with me. "Award ceremony Thursday evening, return flight Friday afternoon. Simple and straightforward." I nodded agreeably. "You've thought of everything." What he hadn't thought of was my own parallel planning. While he arranged our Geneva accommodations, I had Mina book a private suite at Le Montreux Palace under her name. While he scheduled our Swiss Air flight, I arranged for a private helicopter transfer from Geneva to Montreux immediately after landing. And while he focused on controlling my movements, I prepared to access accounts that had remained untouched for nearly 2 decades. The night before our departure, I called Lucian one final time. "Everything is prepared?" "All arranged according to Protocol Nightingale," he confirmed. "I'll meet you at the Montreux location. Thea." He hesitated. "Are you certain about this? Once initiated, there's no turning back." "I'm certain, Lucian. Zachary has made his choice. Now I'm making mine." As I packed my luggage under Imogen's watchful eye, I deliberately included items that supported the award ceremony narrative, an elegant evening gown, appropriate jewelry, sensible walking shoes for the conference. What I packed in my carry-on was far more significant: Jasper's leather journal, a set of vintage safe deposit box keys, and a small USB drive containing encryption codes that would make any tech company salivate. "You seem remarkably calm for someone who hasn't traveled internationally in years," Imogen observed. I smiled as I folded a silk scarf. "At my age, dear, one learns to accept whatever comes with equanimity. Even unexpected developments? Especially those." I closed my suitcase with a decisive click. The secret to a long life is adaptability. The morning of our departure, Zachary insisted on driving us to the airport himself. He hovered, as we checked in, repeating instructions as though I were a child on my first school trip. "Remember, Mother, Imogen has all your medications scheduled. The car will meet you directly outside baggage claim. Look for your name on a placard. If you need anything at all, call me immediately, regardless of the time difference." "Yes, dear." I patted his cheek patronizingly. "I think I can manage a simple international flight. I was traveling to Europe before you were born." At the security checkpoint, he finally had to let us go. I watched as he stood there, monitoring our progress through the line, only leaving when we were completely out of sight. Once aboard the aircraft, I settled into my first-class seat with a sigh of relief. Imogen took the seat beside me, alert as always. "Would you like a pre-departure beverage, Mrs. Blackwood?" the flight attendant offered. "Champagne, please," I requested. "We're celebrating." Imogen declined a drink, her attention focused on scanning our surroundings. As the aircraft doors closed and we began our taxi to the runway, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. Phase 1 was complete. I was beyond Zachary's immediate reach. "You seem pleased," Imogen observed quietly. I sipped my champagne. "What's not to be pleased about? I'm receiving a prestigious award, enjoying first-class travel, and spending time in beautiful Switzerland. Life is good." Her expression suggested she wasn't convinced. "And your son's concern for your well-being doesn't factor into your mood?" I met her gaze directly. "Zachary's concern is for his inheritance, not my well-being. Let's not pretend otherwise." For the first time, I saw something like genuine curiosity in her eyes. "And you're not concerned about how your actions might affect him?" "My dear," I leaned closer, lowering my voice. "Every parent hopes to teach their children important life lessons. Zachary is about to learn one he should have mastered long ago. Never underestimate your mother." The flight passed uneventfully. I pretended to doze while mentally reviewing each step of my plan. Beside me, Imogen remained vigilant, occasionally checking her phone despite the airplane mode requirement. Interesting. As we began our descent into Geneva, she finally broke the extended silence. "Whatever you're planning, I want you to know that my primary responsibility is your safety." I studied her carefully. "Are you trying to reassure me or warn me?" "Perhaps both," she admitted. "Things may not unfold exactly as you anticipate." "They rarely do," I acknowledged. "That's why adaptability is so crucial." We landed at Geneva International Airport right on schedule. As we disembarked, I noticed Imogen scanning the jet bridge, her posture subtly alert. I followed her gaze to a nondescript man in a dark suit waiting by the gate, one of Zachary's security personnel, no doubt. "I see my son has arranged a welcoming committee," I remarked dryly. Imogen placed a guiding hand at my elbow. "Mr. Blackwood mentioned additional security would be present." "How thoughtful," I murmured, allowing her to steer me toward the waiting man. "And completely unnecessary." The security agent nodded respectfully. "Mrs. Blackwood, the car is waiting to take you directly to the hotel." "Actually," I said firmly, "I'm feeling a bit indisposed after the flight. I'd like to use the restroom first." He hesitated, glancing at Imogen, who nodded slightly. "Of course," I'll escort you. That won't be necessary, I asserted. Imogen can accompany me. We'll meet you at baggage claim. Before he could object, I turned and walked toward the nearest women's restroom, Imogen close behind. Once inside, I checked my watch pointedly. In approximately 2 minutes, a Swiss airport authority will approach our friend out there with questions about his purpose here, I informed her calmly. During that distraction, you and I will exit through the service corridor behind that maintenance door. Imogen's eyebrows rose. And why would I help you evade the security your son arranged? I smiled. Because you're curious to see what happens next. And because, despite your professional obligations, you've developed a certain respect for my autonomy. She considered this, then nodded once, decisively. 2 minutes, you said? My smile widened. Possibly less. Mina's husband plays golf with the head of airport security. Precisely on cue, a uniformed official approached our waiting security agent, requesting identification and purpose of visit. As they became engaged in conversation, I pushed open the maintenance door, revealing a service corridor beyond. After you, Imogen gestured with surprising acquiescence. We navigated the corridor quickly, emerging near a staff exit that led directly to the executive aviation terminal. A helicopter waited on the tarmac, rotors already spinning. You've been planning this for some time, Imogen observed as we crossed the tarmac. Longer than you might imagine, I confirmed, ducking slightly as we approached the helicopter. The pilot helped us aboard, securing the doors before lifting off smoothly. Below, I caught a glimpse of the security agent rushing onto the tarmac, his face twisted in consternation as we rose beyond his reach. Montreux? The pilot confirmed through our headsets. Yes, I replied. And please take the scenic route over the lake. As Geneva receded behind us and the spectacular vista of Lake Geneva opened up before us, I felt a surge of exhilaration. After months of playing the compliant, declining mother, I was finally back in control. Beside me, Imogen removed her phone from her pocket, staring at it thoughtfully. Then, to my surprise, she powered it off completely and slipped it back into her jacket. No report to my son? I inquired. She turned to face me, her expression unreadable through the helicopter headset. Let's just say I'm taking a temporary leave from those particular duties. Interesting, I mused. And what prompted this sudden professional flexibility? Let's call it professional curiosity. I want to see how this plays out. The helicopter banked gently, following the northern shoreline of the lake. Below us, vineyards and Belle Epoque hotels dotted the landscape, leading eventually to the fairy tale spires of Château de Chillon and the elegant sweep of Montreux's promenade. It's beautiful, Imogen remarked, gazing down at the landscape. Yes, I agreed, and home to some of the world's most secure banking institutions. Her eyes snapped to mine with new understanding. The Swiss accounts your son doesn't know about. I simply smiled in response as the helicopter began its descent toward the private helipad at Le Montreux Palace. Lucien was waiting for us, distinguished in his tailored suit despite his 75 years, silver hair gleaming in the afternoon sun. Thea, he embraced me warmly as I stepped onto the landing pad. Bienvenue à Montreux. Lucien, I returned his embrace. It's been too long. His eyes shifted to Imogen, questioning. My nurse and companion, I explained, and, it seems, a temporary ally. He assessed her with the sharp gaze of a man who had spent decades evaluating trustworthiness. Enchantée, mademoiselle. Shall we? I gestured toward the waiting Bentley. As we settled into the luxurious leather interior, Lucien handed me a slim portfolio. Everything is prepared according to your instructions. The bank expects us at 4 o'clock. Perfect, I reviewed the documents quickly. And the other matter? Handled, he assured me. The transfer is ready to execute on your authorization. Imogen watched this exchange with quiet intensity. May I ask what exactly we're doing here? I turned to her with a calm smile. We're teaching my son a valuable lesson about greed, control, and the consequences of both. We pulled up to the grand façade of Banque Helvétique Privée, its discreet brass plaque the only indication of the immense wealth secured within its walls. Unlike the glass and steel monuments to capitalism that dominated American banking, Swiss private banks maintained an air of understated elegance. Old money required no announcement. Wait here, I instructed Imogen as Lucienne helped me from the car. This won't take long. She shook her head firmly. My responsibility is to remain with you at all times. I studied her face, searching for her true motives. Was she still reporting to Zachary, despite her apparent defection? Or was there something else driving her insistence? Very well, I conceded. But you'll need to surrender your phone before entering. Bank policy. She hesitated momentarily before handing her powered-off device to the security guard at the entrance. He placed it in a sealed envelope, providing her with a claim ticket in return. Inside, the bank's austere elegance spoke of centuries of discretion and wealth preservation. No flashy displays, no digital tickers, just burnished wood, subdued lighting, and the hushed atmosphere of serious money. The bank manager, Monsieur Delacroix, greeted me with a formal bow. Madame Blackwood, a pleasure to see you again after so many years. The pleasure is mine, Philippe, I replied, accepting his courteous kiss on each cheek. I see your father finally allowed you to take the reins. He smiled. Only after 30 years of apprenticeship, he sends his regards. Is everything prepared as requested? Naturally, if you'll follow me to the private room. He led us through a series of security checkpoints, each more sophisticated than the last. Biometric scanners, reinforced doors with time-lock mechanisms, armed guards who appeared and disappeared with Swiss precision. Finally, we entered a wood-paneled room containing nothing but an antique table, 4 chairs, and a modestly sized safe embedded in the wall. I'll require verification, Philippe stated formally, opening a leather folio. I placed my palm on the biometric scanner, then provided a series of memorized codes that hadn't been spoken aloud in nearly 2 decades. Nightingale Protocol Authorization, Thea Jasper, 1987 Delta. Philippe nodded, satisfied. Voice print and codes confirmed. He gestured to the safe. You may proceed, madame. From my handbag, I removed Jasper's leather journal and the set of vintage keys. Imogen, would you mind giving us some privacy? This is a family matter. To my surprise, she shook her head again. I'm afraid not, Thea. Before I could respond, she reached inside her jacket and extracted an identification card, presenting it to Philippe. Special Agent Imogen Chen, Interpol Financial Crimes Division. I need to be present for this transaction. The shock must have shown on my face because, she quickly added, this isn't about you, Thea. We've been investigating your son for quite some time. My gaze shifted to Lucien, who appeared equally surprised. Interpol? What exactly is Zachary involved in? Imogen's expression remained professional. Money laundering, securities fraud, and several other financial crimes. We believe the sale of your Zurich office is connected to a larger scheme involving Russian oligarchs. Viktor Krasnov, I murmured, pieces falling into place. Among others, she confirmed. I was placed in your household to monitor communications between Zachary and his associates. Your independent activities were unexpected, but potentially relevant to our investigation. I absorbed this information, reassessing weeks of interactions through this new lens. So your loyalty was never to my son. No, she acknowledged. My loyalty is to justice, but I've developed a genuine concern for your welfare, which is why I'm here now. Philippe cleared his throat discreetly. Shall we proceed, Madame Blackwood? Or would you prefer to reschedule in light of this development? I squared my shoulders. We proceed. Turning to Imogen, I added, whatever my son has done, these accounts were established decades before he had any involvement in the company. They contain personal funds legally obtained and properly declared to appropriate tax authorities. I'm not here to interfere with legitimate transactions, she assured me, only to observe. With a nod to Philippe, I approached the safe. Using the vintage keys and a final biometric scan, I unlocked the heavy door. Inside lay 3 items, a stack of documents in a leather portfolio, a small metal lockbox, and a sealed envelope yellowed with age. I removed the portfolio first, opening it on the table. These are the original bearer certificates for the 3 Swiss accounts established in 1987, plus documentation of all subsequent transactions. Lucien leaned forward, examining the papers. Everything appears in order. The main account has accrued substantial interest over the years. What's the current balance? I asked. Approximately 247 million Swiss francs, he replied, consulting his notes. The secondary accounts contain an additional 83 million and 112 million respectively. Imogen couldn't quite suppress her reaction. That's over 400 million euros. A lifetime of prudent investment, I remarked calmly, and completely separate from Blackwood Technologies' corporate assets, which is why Zachary never found these accounts in his investigations. Next, I opened the lockbox, revealing dozens of computer storage devices, floppy disks, zip drives, early USB sticks, a physical timeline of technological evolution. These contain the original source code and encryption keys for the Blackwood protocol. Jasper kept backups here, away from corporate servers and potential industrial espionage. Imogen's interest visibly intensified. Those would be invaluable to certain parties. Exactly why they've remained secure all these years. I turned to the final item, the sealed envelope. My fingers trembled slightly as I broke the wax seal. This, however, is what Zachary truly fears, whether he knows it or not. The envelope contained a single document, a handwritten letter, from Jasper dated 1 week before his death. I scanned it silently, my heart constricting at the familiar handwriting. What does it say? Lucien asked gently. Rather than answer directly, I handed the letter to Philippe. I need this verified and notarized immediately. Then I'll require secure video conferencing facilities. He bowed slightly. Of course, madame. I'll arrange everything at once. As Philippe departed with the letter, Imogen stepped closer. May I ask what that document contains? Evidence, I replied simply, of a truth Zachary has spent years trying to bury. We relocated to a modern conference room within the bank's secure area. A large screen dominated one wall, while a digital notary station occupied another. Philippe returned with Jasper's letter, now bearing official verification seals. The conference is arranged as requested, he informed me. All parties will be connected momentarily. The screen flickered to life, revealing a split display of 4 video feeds. Judge Eleanor Harrington from her chambers in Boston. Thomas Whitfield, the current chairman of the Blackwood Technologies Board. Regina Moss, our longtime corporate counsel. And finally, Zachary himself. His expression a mixture of fury and fear. Mother. His voice was tightly controlled. Would you care to explain why you've disappeared from your official itinerary and are now making unauthorized contact with board members? Oh, Zachary, I sighed. Always so concerned about authorization. I'm simply having a conversation with old friends. Eleanor spoke next, her judicial demeanor firmly in place. Thea, we're all here as requested. Perhaps you could explain why you've called this emergency meeting. Certainly. I straightened in my chair, addressing the screen. As you all know, following my 70th birthday, I resigned as chairwoman of Blackwood Technologies and transferred control of my personal finances to my son. What you may not know is that this resignation was tactical, prompted by Zachary's increasingly transparent attempts to have me declared incompetent. Zachary's face reddened. That's absurd. I've only ever acted in your best interest. Is scheduling me for cognitive evaluations without my prior knowledge acting in my best interest? Is hiring a nurse to monitor my behavior and report my lapses acting in my best interest? Is selling the Zurich office to a known corporate raider with ties to Russian oligarchs acting in my best interest? Thomas Whitfield leaned forward, his bushy eyebrows drawing together. Sold the Zurich office? To whom? Viktor Krasnov, I replied. The sale was finalized yesterday. Regina Moss gasped. That transaction wasn't approved by the full board. It would require my signature as founder, I interjected, which Zachary obtained through misrepresentation. A signature I am now formally rescinding, with cause. Zachary's expression darkened further. You can't do that. The papers are signed, the transaction completed. Actually, Eleanor interjected, if there's evidence of duress or misrepresentation, she absolutely can challenge the validity of that signature. This is ridiculous, Zachary sputtered. Mother is clearly confused, which only reinforces my concerns about her cognitive state. I smiled thinly. I'm not confused, Zachary. I'm finally seeing with perfect clarity, and what I see is a son who has systematically attempted to usurp control not just of my personal assets, but of Blackwood Technologies itself through fraudulent means. What evidence do you have of fraud? Thomas demanded, his loyalty clearly wavering. First, documentation of Zachary's communications with Krasnov dating back 18 months, discussing not just the sale of the Zurich property, but transfer of proprietary technology. I nodded to Lucian, who began displaying documents on a portion of the screen. Second, financial records showing substantial payments from Celestine Holdings, a shell company controlled by Krasnov, to a Cayman Islands account in Zachary's name. The board members leaned forward, examining the evidence with growing concern. And finally, I continued, a letter written by Jasper 1 week before his death, expressing his explicit intention that Zachary never gain majority control of Blackwood Technologies due to, in his words, concerning ethical lapses and judgment issues that make him fundamentally unsuited to lead. Zachary's face contorted with rage. That's a forgery. Dad would never. The letter has been verified and notarized. I cut him off. Its authenticity is beyond question. Eleanor cleared her throat. Thea, what exactly are you asking the board to do? I am exercising my right as majority shareholder to call for an emergency vote removing Zachary Blackwood from his position as CEO, effective immediately, pending a full investigation of his financial dealings. The screen exploded with reaction. Thomas, demanding clarification. Regina citing bylaws. Eleanor attempting to establish order. Through it all, Zachary stared at me with pure hatred. You'll regret this, he hissed, his voice barely audible beneath the others. You have no idea what you've done. I met his gaze evenly. I know exactly what I've done. I've protected what your father and I built from being sold to the highest bidder by our own son. The meeting continued for another hour as procedures were established, interim leadership appointed, and a formal investigation initiated. When finally the video conference ended, I sat back in my chair, suddenly feeling every one of my 70 years. Are you all right? Imogen asked quietly. Just tired, I admitted. It's been a long day. An impressive one, she offered. Not many people would have the courage or capacity to do what you just did. I smiled wryly. When you've lived as long as I have, you learn to play the long game. Zachary always wanted immediate results, a fundamental flaw in his character that Jasper recognized years ago. Lucian touched my shoulder gently. What will you do now, Thea? Zachary won't take this lightly. No, he won't, I agreed. Which is why I've already taken precautions. Turning to Imogen, I asked, how quickly can Interpol move against him now that you have this evidence? She pulled out a secure satellite phone, not the one she'd surrendered at the entrance. I can have agents at his location within the, hour. But Thea, you should know. Our investigation suggests he may have contingency plans in place. Of course he does, I nodded. So do I. We returned to Le Montreux Palace as dusk descended over Lake Geneva, painting the water in shades of amber and gold. In the hotel's elegant suite, I finally allowed myself a moment to process the day's events, pouring a small measure of cognac from the crystal decanter. You should rest, Lucian suggested, concern evident in his voice. It's been an overwhelming day. Soon, I promised, sipping the amber liquid slowly. First, there's one more thing I need to address. I turned to Imogen, who stood vigilant, near the door. Your mission with Interpol clearly explains your presence in my home, but not your decision to accompany me here against Zachary's interests. Why reveal yourself now? She hesitated, her professional mask slipping slightly. It wasn't just about the investigation. The more I observed you, the more I realized you weren't what Zachary claimed. A declining elderly woman being manipulated by others. You were systematically outmaneuvering him at every turn. I found that admirable. Admirable enough to risk compromising your cover? My primary objective was gathering evidence against Zachary and his network. When you came to Switzerland, it presented an unexpected opportunity to access banking records we might never have obtained otherwise. She paused, then added with unexpected candor, and yes, I wanted to see how your story would end. My phone chimed with an incoming message. Checking it, I nodded with satisfaction. Interpol agents have just taken Zachary into custody at his Boston office. Apparently, he was attempting to delete files when they arrived. Too late, Imogen remarked. We already have mirrors of his servers. The phone chimed again, this time with a call from Eleanor. I put it on speaker. Thea, it's done, she reported without preamble. The board voted unanimously to remove Zachary and appoint Thomas as interim CEO. The legal team is already securing all corporate assets. Thank you, Eleanor. And the other matter? Handled as well. I've had the power of attorney documents nullified on grounds of misrepresentation. Your personal accounts should be restored to your control by morning. After ending the call, I gazed out at the twilight settling over the Swiss landscape. Jasper loved this view, I murmured. We spent our honeymoon in this very hotel, planning our future together. Lucien stepped beside me. He would be proud of what you did today. Perhaps, I acknowledged, though I take no pleasure in exposing our son's betrayal. A discreet knock at the door interrupted our conversation. Imogen answered it, admitting a hotel staff member with an envelope marked, Urgent, Personal Delivery. I opened it immediately, scanning the contents with growing alarm. Zachary's been released on bail, I announced. His passport has been confiscated, but he's no longer in custody. Imogen frowned. That's irregular. The charges would normally require money talks, I cut in grimly. And Zachary has access to funds we know nothing about. The question is, what will he do next? The answer came sooner than expected. My phone rang again, displaying Phoebe's number. Thea? Her voice was strained, fearful. Zachary knows everything. He's furious. I've never seen him like this. Are you safe? I demanded immediately. For now. I'm at my sister's house with the children. But Thea, he's coming after you. He said. She hesitated, her voice dropping to a whisper. He said if you could access hidden accounts, so could he. That you weren't the only one with secrets in Switzerland. My blood ran cold. What exactly did he say, Phoebe? Something about a second protocol, that Jasper never trusted just one backup system. Does that make sense to you? It did. all too clearly. Beside me, Lucian had gone pale. "The Raven Protocol," he murmured. "Jasper's failsafe." I ended the call with instructions for Phoebe to remain with her sister and contact Eleanor if anything changed. Then I turned to Lucian. "How much do you know about Raven?" He shook his head. "Only that it exists. Jasper mentioned it once, years ago, as a last resort mechanism, something that could override the primary Blackwood protocol in case of catastrophic security breach. The ultimate kill switch," I confirmed. "A system designed to erase and replace the entire encryption framework if it were ever compromised." I paced the room, mind racing, but its location was supposed to be known only to Jasper and me. "Perhaps Jasper shared it with Zachary?" Imogen suggested. "Never," I said firmly. "Jasper didn't trust Zachary with that level of access, which means—" "Zachary found it on his own," Lucian finished grimly. I sank into a chair, suddenly overwhelmed by the implications. If Zachary activates the Raven Protocol, he could effectively destroy Blackwood Technologies from within. Decades of secure systems, government infrastructure, financial networks, all vulnerable simultaneously. "And likely already sold access to the highest bidder," Imogen added. "Krasnov and his associates would pay billions for that capability." "We need to find it before he activates it," I declared, pushing myself back to my feet. "Lucian, contact the bank. We need to return immediately." "At this hour?" he questioned. "It's nearly midnight." "Philippe will make an exception," I insisted, already reaching for my coat. "If Zachary found a secondary vault or account that I don't know about, there must be a record somewhere in their system." The return to Banque Helvétique Privée took on an urgency that belied the quiet elegance of the institution. Philippe met us at a private entrance, concern evident in his usually impassive features. "Madam Blackwood, we've conducted a preliminary search based on your request," he reported as he escorted us through darkened corridors. "Our records show that Monsieur Jasper Blackwood did indeed establish a secondary security protocol, accessible only with dual authentication." "Dual authentication requiring what exactly?" I pressed. "Two specific individuals, providing simultaneous biometric verification at two separate locations." My heart sank. "Let me guess, myself and my son." Philippe nodded solemnly. "The designation specified founder and heir apparent as the required parties. However," he continued, lowering his voice, "there is a provision for emergency override in case one party is unavailable." "Unavailable," I repeated. "A delicate way of saying deceased or incapacitated." "Precisely," he confirmed. "The override requires presentation of a specific artifact, plus biometric verification from the remaining authorized party." "What artifact?" Lucien asked. Philippe consulted his notes. "The documentation refers to it as the Raven's Eye." I gasped, my hand instinctively reaching for the jade earrings I wore, Jasper's gift after our first million. "Of course," I whispered, "hidden in plain sight all these years." Removing one earring, I examined it closely under the light. The deep green jade was carved in an abstract design that, viewed from certain angles, resembled a stylized eye. Pressing my fingernail against a nearly invisible seam, I felt a slight click as the stone separated, revealing a tiny microchip embedded within. "The Raven's Eye," I confirmed, holding it up. "Jasper's ultimate backup plan." Philippe led us to a specialized scanning room where the chip could be analyzed safely. As the system worked, I paced nervously, keenly aware that Zachary might already be attempting to access the protocol from Boston. If he's found Jasper's access codes, I mused aloud, he might be able to bypass the dual authentication requirement. Through some other means. "Unlikely," Philippe assured me. "The system requires physical presence at designated verification points. One here in Montreux, one at the Boston headquarters. which is currently swarming with corporate security and legal teams, Imogen added. He'd have difficulty accessing restricted areas without being noticed. The scanner completed its analysis, projecting data onto a secure screen. Philippe studied the information intently. The chip contains coordinates, access codes, and activation sequences for the Raven protocol. According to this, the override terminal is located not here, but at Château de Chillon. The castle? Lucien exclaimed in surprise. Why there? I smiled despite the tension. It was our favorite place, in Switzerland. Jasper proposed to me on the castle bridge. He always had a romantic streak beneath that pragmatic exterior. The chateau is closed to visitors at this hour, Philippe noted, but I can arrange special access given the circumstances. Do it, I instructed, and contact Thomas Whitfield. Immediately. Have him secure the Boston terminal and confirm that Zachary hasn't attempted access. Within 30 minutes, we were crossing the floodlit courtyard of Château de Chillon, a medieval fortress extending into Lake Geneva. A night security guard led us through ancient stone passages to a modern security door incongruously installed in the base of the North Tower. This area was privately leased 20 years ago, he explained, swiping a keycard. Access is restricted, to authorized personnel only. The door opened to reveal a small, climate-controlled room containing a single computer terminal on a wooden desk. The setup looked deceptively simple, but I recognized the sophisticated security measures disguised within the antiquated appearance. This is it, I breathed, approaching the terminal cautiously. Jasper's fail-safe. My phone rang, Thomas Whitfield calling from Boston. Thea, we've secured the headquarters terminal, but there's a problem. Access logs show Zachary was here 2 hours ago. He attempted to initiate the protocol but couldn't complete the sequence without the second verification. Then we still have time, I said, relief flooding through me. Has he been located? Not yet. Security footage shows him leaving the building, but his current whereabouts are unknown. I ended the call and turned to Imogen. How quickly can Interpol have agents at the chateau? 20 minutes minimum, she replied, already making the call. But Thea, what exactly are we dealing with? What does this Raven protocol actually do? I sat at the terminal, inserting the microchip from my earring into a discrete port. The Blackwood encryption protocol secures data for governments, financial institutions, and critical infrastructure worldwide. The Raven protocol is its self-destruct mechanism, capable of systematically dismantling those security measures and replacing them with alternate systems. Alternate systems controlled by whoever activates the protocol, Lucien added grimly. If Zachary sold access to Krasnov, then Russian operatives could potentially gain control of everything from nuclear launch codes to global banking systems, I finished. Jasper created this as a last resort against catastrophic compromise, never imagining our own son might be the threat. The terminal activated, displaying a complex authentication sequence. I placed my palm on the scanner, spoke the passphrase, and entered Jasper's personal codes. Override sequence initiated, the system announced in a synthesized voice. Awaiting secondary verification from Boston terminal. My phone rang again. This time, it was Eleanor. Thea, something's happening. The board just received notice that Zachary has called an emergency shareholder meeting for tomorrow morning. He's invoking some obscure bylaw allowing him to challenge your controlling interest. He's stalling, I realized, creating a distraction while he figures out how to complete the protocol activation. Eleanor, have Thomas lock down the Boston's terminal completely. No access, no exceptions. As I ended the call, the chateau's ancient stones seemed to close in around me. For the first time, I truly grasped the magnitude of what Jasper had created and the catastrophic potential of its misuse. What happens now? Imogen asked quietly. I studied the terminal's display, noting the override protocols still accessible, with my authentication alone. I can't deactivate the Raven protocol completely without dual verification, but I can modify its parameters, change what it does if activated. To what end? Lucian inquired. To ensure it can never be weaponized, I replied, fingers flying across the keyboard. Instead of providing alternate access, I'm recoding it to trigger a complete system shutdown, a true kill switch rather than a transfer of control. Imogen nodded appreciatively. Better to disable the entire system than allow it to be compromised. Exactly. Blackwood Technologies can rebuild from backup systems, but we can't recover from a security breach of this magnitude. As I worked, Lucian kept watch at the door while Imogen maintained contact with Interpol. The midnight hours stretched on as I navigated layers of encryption Jasper had built over decades. Finally, the system displayed a confirmation message. Protocol parameters modified. Awaiting final authorization. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the execute command. This would irreversibly alter Jasper's creation, the crowning achievement of our life's work. He would understand, Lucian said softly, as if reading my thoughts. Jasper always valued security over legacy. With a deep breath, I pressed enter. Authorization confirmed. The screen flickered, then displayed a simple message. Modifications accepted. Raven protocol reconfigured. Just as I exhaled in relief, an alarm blared from the terminal. Warning, remote access attempt detected at Boston node. Zachary? I gasped. But how? The terminal was supposed to be locked down. The answer came moments later as Thomas called in a panic. Thea, Zachary somehow accessed the server room through an old maintenance tunnel. He's locked himself in with the terminal. Security can't breach the door without risking the entire system. My blood ran cold. Thomas, listen carefully. Under no circumstances can Zachary be allowed to complete the authorization sequence. The consequences would be catastrophic. We're trying, but... His voice cut off abruptly, replaced by a new one. Hello, Mother. Zachary's voice was unnervingly calm. Impressive work finding the override. Dad always said you were the clever one. Zachary, stop this madness, I pleaded. You have no idea what you're tampering with. Oh, but I do, he countered smoothly. I've spent years studying Father's systems. Did you think I was just playing CEO while you judged me from the sidelines? I was learning, preparing, understanding what he built better than even you do. Then you know activating the Raven protocol would be disastrous. It could destabilize global security systems overnight. He laughed coldly. Only in its original configuration, but I've made my own modifications. When activated, it won't destroy anything. It will simply transfer control to a new authorization framework, one that certain interested parties have paid handsomely to access. Krasnov, I spat the name. Among others. The digital world is changing, Mother. Nation-states are becoming irrelevant. The real power lies with those who control information. Flow. And you're just giving that power away for money? Not giving, selling at a premium. The future belongs to those with vision, not those clinging to outdated ideals of corporate responsibility. I signaled urgently to Imogen, who understood immediately, speaking quietly into her phone to coordinate with Boston authorities. Listen to me, Zachary. I kept my voice level, playing for time. Whatever you've been promised, whatever you believe you're creating, you're being used. Men like Krasnov don't honor deals. They eliminate liabilities once they get what they want. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in his voice. You're wrong. I'm a necessary part of the new protocol. They need me to maintain the systems. Until they don't, I pressed. Think, Zachary. Why would international criminals with unlimited resources keep you around once they have control? You'd be the single biggest threat to their operation, the one person who could potentially undo their access. A long pause followed. I could almost hear him calculating, reassessing. "It doesn't matter," he finally said, his voice hardening. "Again. I've come too far to turn back now. The protocol activates in 60 seconds with or without your approval." I glanced at the terminal before me, its display confirming his threat. "Remote override initiated. Activation sequence commencing. 60, 59, 58. Zachary, I've reconfigured the Raven protocol," I said urgently. "If you activate it now, it won't transfer control. It will shut down every Blackwood-secured system globally. Decades of work, billions in value, all gone instantly." "You're bluffing," he scoffed, but I detected a note of uncertainty. "Am I? You know what I'm capable of. You know I would destroy everything we built rather than see it weaponized against the innocent." The countdown continued mercilessly. 45, 44, 43. "It's not too late to stop this," I continued, desperation creeping into my voice. "Whatever you've done, whatever promises you've made, we can fix it. But not if you cross this line." "There's no going back for me," he replied, his voice suddenly tired. "After what you did today, my career is over. My reputation is destroyed. This is my only option." "No, it isn't," I insisted. "Cooperate with authorities. Provide evidence against Krasnov and his network. I'll ensure you receive consideration for your cooperation." The countdown reached 30 seconds as Zachary remained silent on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the wheels turning in his mind, weighing options, calculating outcomes. 25 seconds, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Make your choice, Zachary." "How do I know you're telling the truth about reconfiguring the protocol?" he finally asked. "You don't," I admitted. "But ask yourself, would I lie when the stakes are this high? When global security hangs in the balance? You know me better than that." 20 seconds, the system intoned dispassionately. I heard shouting in the background on Zachary's end. Security personnel, perhaps, or law enforcement attempting to breach the server room. Time was running out. "Zachary," I said, my voice softer now, "I know I haven't always been the mother you needed. Perhaps I was too focused on the company, too demanding of perfection. But everything I did, everything your father and I built, was meant to create something meaningful. Something that helped rather than harmed. Please don't destroy that legacy." 10 seconds. His breathing was audible now, ragged and uncertain. 5 seconds. "I'm sorry," he whispered. 3, 2. "Override authorization, Blackwood Zachary termination Delta," he suddenly barked into the system. "Activation sequence aborted," the terminal announced, its screen returning to standby mode. I slumped back in my chair, relief washing over me in dizzying waves. "Thank you," I breathed. "Don't thank me yet," Zachary replied bitterly. "They're coming through the door now. This isn't over, Mother. Not by a long shot." The line went dead as commotion erupted on the other end. Imogen was already on her satellite phone, speaking rapidly to her colleagues in Boston. "Confirm suspect is in custody. Protocol deactivated. Proceed with evidence collection according to Procedure Delta." Lucian placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. "You did it, Thea." "We did it," I corrected, covering his hand with mine. "But Zachary's right about one thing. This isn't over." The aftermath unfolded with dizzying speed. Zachary was taken into custody by federal agents, charged with multiple counts of corporate espionage, wire fraud, and attempted cybercrime. Interpol coordinated simultaneous raids across Europe, arresting Viktor Krasnov and 3 of his associates as they attempted to board a private jet in Munich. I remained in Montreux for 3 days, working with Swiss authorities and Blackwood Technologies' security team to strengthen protections around both the primary and Raven protocols. Jasper's systems were genius, but they had been designed in an era when threats came primarily from nation-states and organized hacking groups, not from within one's own family. On the fourth morning, as I sipped coffee on the hotel balcony overlooking the lake, Imogen joined me with news. "Zachary's talking," she announced without preamble. "He's agreed to cooperate fully in exchange for consideration during sentencing." I nodded, unsurprised. Self-preservation was always his strongest instinct. He's provided detailed information about Krasnov's entire network, shell companies, financial structures, blackmail targets. It's impressive, actually. Your son may have been misguided, but he's undeniably thorough. He gets that from his father? I remarked dryly. Jasper could unravel the most complex systems and reconstruct them from memory. Zachary inherited that gift, just not the moral compass to guide it. Imogen hesitated, then added, "There's something else. According to his testimony, this plan has been in development for over 5 years, since before your husband's death." The coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. "What are you suggesting?" "Nothing definitively," she said carefully. "But there are inconsistencies in the timeline. Questions about whether Jasper's heart condition might have been exacerbated. The implication hung in the air between us, too terrible to voice explicitly. Could Zachary have somehow contributed to his father's death? The thought was so monstrous, so fundamentally at odds with the child I had raised, that my mind recoiled from it. "I want to see the evidence," I demanded, setting down my cup with a sharp clink. "It's not conclusive," Imogen cautioned. "Just suspicious patterns in Jasper's medical records, unusual access to his personal physician's files, certain medications that went missing from his prescriptions." "Circumstantial," I murmured, though a cold weight settled in my stomach. "But worth investigating. Interpol is pursuing it discreetly. Given Zachary's cooperation on the larger case, additional charges would only be brought with overwhelming evidence." I nodded, my gaze fixed on the distant mountains. As it should be, justice requires certainty, not merely suspicion. Later, that morning, I received a secure video call from Thomas Whitfield. The interim CEO looked exhausted but resolute on my screen. "The board has completed its emergency assessment," he reported. "The damage appears contained. Zachary never managed to implement the back doors he promised Krasnov, though not for lack of trying." "What about the Zurich office sale?" I asked. "We've filed to invalidate the transaction on grounds of corporate malfeasance. Our legal team is confident it will be overturned." "And the company's stability?" Thomas grimaced. "Stock took a 15% hit when news broke about Zachary's arrest, but it's already recovering. The fact that we caught and contained the threat internally before any breach occurred is being viewed positively by the market." "Small mercies," I remarked. "There is one other matter," Thomas added. "The board is requesting your return, not just to oversee the transition, but to resume your position as chairwoman, at least temporarily." I laughed softly. How quickly they changed their tune. Last month, half the board was convinced I was too frail and addled to maintain my seat. "Perceptions have shifted," he acknowledged wryly. "Nothing clarifies vision like narrowly avoiding catastrophe." I considered the request seriously. Part of me longed to wash my hands of the whole affair, to retreat to quiet retirement with my remaining dignity intact. Yet another part recognized that Blackwood Technologies needed stability now more than ever. "I'll return, but not as chairwoman," I decided. "Appoint Regina Moss to that position. She has the experience and integrity the role requires. I'll serve as special advisor to the board during the transition period. Nothing more." Thomas nodded, visibly relieved. "When can we expect you?" 3 days. There's something personal I need to address first." After ending the call, I summoned Lucian to my suite. He arrived promptly, ever the loyal friend and advisor. "You're returning to Boston?" he asked, noting the open suitcase on my bed. "Soon," I confirmed. "But first, I need to visit Jasper." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "The mausoleum." "It's time," I said simply. The Blackwood family mausoleum stood on a quiet hillside in the most exclusive cemetery in Geneva, a neoclassical structure of pale marble that gleamed like bone in the afternoon light. Jasper had chosen this location during one of our early visits to Switzerland, taken by the view of the lake and mountains beyond. "When my time comes," he'd said, gazing out over the water, "I want to rest somewhere beautiful, somewhere that reminds me of you." Now I stood before the ornate bronze doors, a small bouquet of white roses in my trembling hands. Lucian had offered to accompany me, but this conversation needed to be private. Inside, sunlight filtered through, stained glass windows, casting jewel-toned patterns across the marble floor. Jasper's sarcophagus dominated the central chamber, his name and dates etched in elegant script. I placed the roses on the cool stone, then seated myself on the small bench beside it. "Hello, my love," I whispered, my voice echoing softly. "It's been quite a week." I told him everything: Zachary's betrayal, the Swiss accounts, the Raven protocol, all of it. Perhaps it was foolish to speak to marble and bronze, yet it felt right somehow. Jasper and I had shared everything in life. Why should death change? That fundamental honesty? I should have seen it coming, I admitted, guilt twisting inside me. There were signs, weren't there? Little moments of callousness, of entitlement, that we both noticed but excused as youthful selfishness. We thought he'd grow out of it. The mausoleum remained silent, offering neither absolution nor accusation. Now they're investigating whether he might have... I couldn't finish the thought aloud. I don't want to believe it, Jasper. I can't. Believe our son would do something so monstrous. And yet, I've witnessed his capacity for betrayal firsthand. I sat in silence for several minutes, lost in memories. Zachary as a laughing toddler, racing through our first small house. As a serious schoolboy, proudly showing off his science fair project. As a teenager, distant and moody, but still capable of moments of surprising tenderness. Where had we gone? Wrong? Had wealth corrupted him, or had the seeds of darkness always been there, waiting for opportunity? I miss your wisdom, I sighed, running my fingers along the cold marble. You always saw people more clearly than I did. You warned me about Zachary, didn't you? In your way. The letter, the backup protocols, the safeguards. You anticipated this possibility. A shaft of sunlight shifted, illuminating the inscription. Jasper had chosen years before his death. Veritas numquam perit. Truth never perishes. I protected what we built, I told him. And I'll continue to do so, whatever it takes. Rising from the bench, I pressed my palm against his name one last time. Rest well, my love. I'll handle things from here. Leaving the mausoleum, I found Imogen waiting discreetly by the car, her expression respectfully neutral. Ready to return to the hotel? Not quite yet, I decided. There's someone else I need to see. Zachary had been transferred to a detention facility outside Boston pending formal arraignment, but Phoebe remained in Geneva with the children, staying at her sister's apartment in the Old Town. I had spoken with her briefly by phone, but felt we needed a face-to-face conversation. The apartment was modest by Blackwood standards, but warm and inviting. Phoebe greeted me with obvious anxiety, her eyes darting nervously as she ushered me inside. The children are napping, she whispered, leading me to a small sitting room overlooking a cobblestone courtyard. They don't understand what's happening. I've told them their father is away on business. A kind fiction, I observed, settling into an armchair. But eventually they'll need the truth, or some version of it. Phoebe's hands twisted in her lap. How does one explain to children that their father chose this? That he risked everything, betrayed everyone? One day at a time, I said gently. Children are remarkably resilient, Phoebe. And they have you. Tears welled in her eyes. I keep asking myself if I should have seen it coming. If I missed signs, or worse, enabled him somehow. We all missed signs, I acknowledged. Zachary was skilled at compartmentalizing, at showing different faces to different people. Don't blame yourself for his choices. She nodded, wiping. Her eyes quickly as sounds of stirring children came from the next room. What happens now, Thea? Legally, I mean. Zachary is cooperating with authorities, which should mitigate his sentence somewhat. But given the severity of the charges, he's facing significant prison time, likely 10 to 15 years minimum. Her face paled. The children will be grown by then. Yes, I agreed, seeing no point in sugarcoating reality. Which brings me to the purpose of my visit. I want to establish a trust for you and the children, one that Zachary cannot access. Or influence regardless of future legal maneuvers. I couldn't possibly— It's not charity, Phoebe, I interrupted firmly. It's security for my grandchildren and recognition of the difficult road ahead of you. I'm not asking permission. She studied my face, perhaps searching for ulterior motives before finally nodding. Thank you. There's something else, I added. The board has asked me to return temporarily. I'd like you and the children to come back to Ravenhurst Manor while I'm there. The press will eventually lose interest, and the estate offers privacy during the transition. Surprise flickered across her features. You would still welcome us, after everything? You are family, I said simply. The children are innocent in all this, and you— I paused, choosing my words carefully. You have shown remarkable strength and loyalty, even while married to a man who valued neither. For the first time, a genuine smile touched her lips. You underestimate yourself, Thea. The children adore their grandmother. It would comfort them to be with you during this upheaval. Our conversation was interrupted by the appearance of a tousled-haired 5-year-old in the doorway. My granddaughter Sophia blinked sleepily, then broke into a delighted grin. Grandma! She launched herself into my lap, wrapping small arms around my neck with innocent affection. Did you bring me a Swiss chocolate? I laughed, hugging her. Of course I did. What kind of grandmother would I be otherwise? As I produced the promised treat from my purse, Sophia's brother Marcus appeared, more reserved at 8, but equally pleased to see me. Soon, the formal conversation gave way to children's chatter about toys and cartoons and the fascinating pigeons in the courtyard. Watching them, untouched by the adult complexities swirling around them, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Zachary had betrayed everything we built, but his children represented hope for a different legacy. They would grow up knowing the values that had guided Jasper and me: integrity, responsibility, compassion, not the greed and entitlement that had corrupted their father. The return to Boston 3 days later felt like crossing a threshold between chapters of my life. Ravenhurst Manor stood unchanged, its stately facade offering no hint of the drama that had unfolded in my absence. Yet everything felt different as I stepped through the familiar doors. Imogen accompanied me, ostensibly, to collect her belongings, but actually to conduct a final security sweep of the premises. Though Zachary was in custody, his network of associates remained partially intact, and caution seemed prudent. Your bedroom and study are clear, she reported, rejoining me in the foyer. No surveillance devices, no tampering with security systems. Thank you, I said, then hesitated. What happens now, Agent Chen? Do you disappear back into the shadows of Interpol? A small smile touched her lips. Not immediately. There's still testimony to gather, evidence to process. I'll be in Boston for at least another month. And after that? Another assignment? Another cover identity That's the nature of the work. I nodded, understanding the demands of her profession. Well, should you find yourself at loose ends during your remaining time in Boston, you're welcome here for dinner. Despite recent events, I still set an excellent table. Her smile widened. I might take you up on that, Mrs. Blackwood. Thea, I corrected gently. After everything we've been through, I think we're well past formalities. After she departed, I wandered the quiet halls of Ravenhurst, reacquainting myself with the space. So much had changed in the weeks since my 70th birthday. The woman who had stood in this foyer then, apparently frail, seemingly acquiescent to her son's manipulations, felt like a stranger now. In my study, I found everything precisely as I had left it, down to the pen resting atop unsigned documents Zachary had prepared. Opening the curtains to let in the afternoon light, I settled behind my desk and began methodically sorting through the accumulated correspondence. Board meeting minutes, financial reports, legal notifications regarding Zachary's case. I reviewed each document carefully, rebuilding my understanding of Blackwood Technology's current position. The company remained fundamentally sound despite the upheaval, its core technologies and client relationships intact. As evening approached, I found myself drawn to the library, where Jasper had spent countless hours in his final years. His favorite, leather chair still stood by the fireplace, a half-finished book of poetry on the side table beside it, untouched since his death by my specific instruction to the staff. I ran my fingers along the worn leather armrest, remembering how he would sit here late into the night, reading by firelight when his eyes grew too tired for computer screens. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to sink into his chair, feeling the impression his body had left in the cushions. The house phone rang, startling me from my reverie. Crossing to the desk, I answered to find Eleanor Harrington on the line. "Thea, welcome home," she greeted warmly. "I've just heard from the prosecutor's office. Zachary's preliminary hearing is scheduled for next Tuesday." So soon? I hadn't expected the wheels of justice to turn quite so rapidly. Given the national security implications, they're expediting the process, she explained. They're also requesting your presence to provide testimony regarding the Blackwood Protocol's significance and potential impact had it been compromised. I closed my eyes briefly, envisioning the courtroom, the press, the public exposure of our family's darkest moment. Of course. I'll be there. Thea, Eleanor's voice softened. Are you certain you're ready for this? No one would blame you for submitting written testimony instead. I appreciate the concern, Eleanor, but I need to face this directly, not just for the case, but for myself. After hanging up, I stood at the library window, watching darkness settle over the estate grounds. The decision to testify against my own son was painful but necessary. Zachary had made his choices. Now we would both live with the consequences. The house phone rang again, this time the security desk at the main gate. "Mrs. Blackwood, there's a Ms. Wilhelmina Hollister here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's quite insistent." I smiled despite myself. Let her through immediately. Minutes later, Mina breezed into the library like a force of nature, designer luggage in tow. "There you are. I've been trying to reach you for days, but apparently Swiss mountain fortresses have terrible cellular reception." "Chateau de Chillon is hardly a mountain fortress," I observed dryly, accepting her fierce hug. "What are you doing here, Mina? I thought you were in Capri for the season. And leave my sister to face this circus alone? Not a chance." She deposited her handbag on a side table with characteristic decisiveness. "I've cleared my calendar through the new year. The villa can wait." "That's entirely unnecessary." "Oh, hush," she interrupted, waving away my protest. "I've already instructed your housekeeper to prepare my usual suite. Now, pour us something appropriate for plotting our next moves." Despite myself, I laughed. Plotting? I thought we were past the need for subterfuge. Darling, we've only completed phase 1, she declared, accepting the scotch I poured her. Zachary's arrest and the company's salvation were mere opening gambits. Now we need to manage the public narrative, protect the children's future, and ensure you emerge from this mess with your reputation not just intact, but enhanced. I raised an eyebrow. Enhanced? Absolutely. She nodded emphatically. By the time I'm done, you'll be the heroic matriarch who saved a global security framework from corporate espionage while showing compassion for your misguided son. The press will eat it up. Business journals, morning shows, perhaps even a tasteful memoir down the road. Mina, I sighed. The last thing I want is publicity. What you want and what you need are different matters entirely, she countered. Perception shapes reality, Thea. If you retreat into seclusion now, rumors will fill the vacuum. Better to control the narrative yourself. She had a point, though I was reluctant to admit it. The Blackwood name was attached not just to our family but to critical technologies used worldwide. Restoring public confidence would require more than legal victories. It would demand a carefully managed public presence. Fine, I conceded, but nothing sensationalistic. No tell-all interviews, no emotional exposés. Dignity above all. Naturally, she agreed, looking slightly offended that I'd suggest otherwise. We're Blackwoods, not reality television stars. I'm a Blackwood, I corrected with a small smile. You're a Hollister who happens to share my DNA. Details, she waved dismissively. Now, tell me everything that happened in Switzerland. The real version, not the sanitized highlights you've undoubtedly been feeding everyone else. For the next 2 hours, I recounted the entire Swiss adventure, the hidden accounts, Imogen's true identity, the Raven Protocol, all of it. Mina listened attentively, interrupting only occasionally for clarification. So this Imogen, she mused when I finished. She's still in Boston? Temporarily, I confirmed, until the investigation concludes. Interesting. Mina's expression turned thoughtful. A highly competent woman who's already proven her discretion and loyalty to justice rather than individuals. We could use someone like that in our corner. She's a federal agent, Mina, not a private security consultant. People change careers. All the time, she observed innocently, especially when presented with compelling alternatives. I shook my head, amused despite myself. Always plotting, aren't you? Someone has to, she retorted. You're too straightforward for your own good sometimes. As night deepened around Ravenhurst Manor, Mina and I continued talking, strategizing, occasionally reminiscing about simpler times. Her presence was a comfort I hadn't realized I needed. A reminder that despite everything, I wasn't facing this challenge alone. Tomorrow would bring meetings with lawyers, conversations with board members, preparations for Zachary's hearing. But tonight, in the quiet sanctuary of Jasper's library, I allowed myself a moment of peace. Not forgetfulness, but acceptance of the path ahead. Mina eventually retired to her suite, citing jet lag, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I poured one final drink and raised it silently toward Jasper's empty chair. We did our best, I whispered. Perhaps it wasn't enough, but we did our best. The following morning brought the expected flurry of activity. Thomas Whitfield arrived with Regina Moss and 3 other board members for a preliminary strategy session. Mina, ever the consummate hostess despite it being my home, arranged for coffee and pastries in the conservatory, where morning light created an atmosphere of calm productivity. The transition plan is straightforward, Regina explained, distributing folders to everyone present. Thea will serve as special advisor to the board for 90 days, focusing primarily on security protocol oversight and client reassurance. I'll assume the chairwoman position effective immediately, with Thomas continuing as interim CEO until a permanent replacement is selected. And the Raven Protocol? I inquired, Decommissioned entirely, Thomas confirmed. Our security team is implementing a new fail-safe system with multiple redundancies and no single point of access. No one person, not even you, Thea, will have complete authorization capability. Good, I nodded. That was always Jasper's blind spot. He believed in individual responsibility over diffused authority. A product of his generation, Regina observed diplomatically. But times change, and so must our security paradigms. The meeting continued for several hours, covering everything from press strategy to shareholder communication to regulatory compliance. By noon, we had established a clear path forward, one that acknowledged the crisis while emphasizing the company's fundamental stability. As the board members prepared to depart, Thomas lingered behind. "There's one matter we haven't addressed," he said quietly. "The possibility that Zachary might have contributed to Jasper's death." I stiffened. "That investigation is ongoing and highly speculative. Nevertheless, we should be prepared for the possibility that evidence might emerge," he persisted. "If it does, the company would face another wave of scrutiny and potential shareholder panic. If evidence emerges," I said carefully, "we will address it truthfully and directly. Until then, it remains an unsubstantiated concern, not a corporate planning matter." He nodded, accepting my boundary. "Fair enough, but Thea, if it were true, would you want to know?" The question hung between us, loaded with implications. Would I want definitive proof that my son had hastened his father's death for financial gain? What mother would seek such devastating certainty? "I have always valued truth, Thomas," I finally answered, "even when it's painful. But some truths serve no purpose except to deepen wounds that may never heal." After everyone departed, I found myself drawn to Jasper's study on the second floor, a room I had avoided since his death, preferring to use the library or my own office for business matters. Unlike the rest of the house, which had been subtly modernized over the years, this room remained frozen in time, a testament to Jasper's preference for analog tools alongside cutting-edge technology. His ancient roll-top desk dominated one corner, its surface still cluttered with pencils, notepads, and mechanical puzzles he used for thinking through complex problems. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with technical manuals, science fiction, novels, and leather-bound journals where he'd recorded insights and inventions throughout his career. I ran my fingers along the spines of these journals, pausing at one from 1987, the year we established the Swiss accounts. Pulling it from the shelf, I settled into Jasper's desk chair and began to read. His familiar handwriting filled the pages, precise yet energetic, like the man himself. Technical diagrams alternated with personal observations, creating a roadmap of his brilliant, restless mind. I found myself smiling at his marginalia, the little jokes and reminders he left for himself. Midway through the journal, a loose page fell out. Not Jasper's handwriting this time, but a letter penned in a childish scrawl. 10-year-old Zachary had written to his father while we were away at a conference. "Dear Dad, I fixed Mom's computer when it crashed. I remembered what you showed me about system restore points. Mrs. Jenkins said I shouldn't touch it, but I knew I could fix it. When you get home, can we work on building that model rocket? I already started the calculations for trajectory like you taught me. Love, Zach." My throat tightened as I stared at this artifact from a more innocent time. The eager boy who had written this letter seemed impossibly distant from the man now sitting in a detention cell, facing federal charges. What had happened to that curious child who wanted so desperately to make his father proud? The phone on Jasper's desk rang, startling me from my reverie. This private line had been disconnected years ago, or so I thought. Cautiously, I lifted the receiver. "Hello?" Static crackled on the line, then a computerized voice spoke. "Nightingale Protocol secondary verification requested. Please provide authentication code." My blood ran cold. The Raven protocol had been deactivated days ago in Switzerland. This couldn't be happening. Identify request origin, I demanded, falling back on security protocols Jasper had established decades ago. Request origin, Celestine Islands remote server. Authentication required for archived data access. The Celestine Islands, the offshore location I had mentioned to Imogen as a facade, a misdirection. But apparently, it was real. Negative, I responded firmly. Protocol deactivated by primary administrator. Verification denied. Verification denied, the voice acknowledged. Initiating containment procedures. All archived data will be permanently deleted in 30 seconds. Wait! I gripped the receiver tighter. Override. Blackwood Thea Preservation Alpha. A long pause followed, then. Override accepted. Archived data preserved. Awaiting further instruction. My mind raced. What was this system? What archived data was at stake? This wasn't the Raven protocol as I understood it, but clearly something Jasper had created as an additional failsafe. Status report, I commanded. Celestine Archive contains 147 terabytes of encrypted historical data, including complete Blackwood family communications, financial records, and personal documentation from 1978 to present. Archive was established by Jasper Blackwood as historical preservation measure, accessible only through dual authentication or emergency override. A digital time capsule. Jasper had created a complete backup of our lives. Every email, every transaction, every piece of our digital existence, stored securely beyond anyone's reach. Including apparently Zachary's. Current access status? I inquired. You are currently the sole authenticated user, Dorothea Blackwood. All other access credentials have been permanently revoked following multiple failed authentication attempts from unauthorized sources. When did these attempts occur? Most recent attempt, 48 hours ago. Origin, Boston Secure Terminal. 2 days ago, while Zachary was in custody, which meant either he had accomplices still trying to access our systems, or someone else entirely was interested in our family's digital history. Secure connection and download complete archive to this terminal, I instructed. Warning, complete download exceeds local storage capacity. Recommend selective retrieval. Understood. Prioritize download of all data related to Jasper Blackwood's medical records and communications from 2018 to 2020. Processing request. Estimated completion time, 17 minutes. As the system worked, I sat motionless in Jasper's chair, contemplating the implications. Whatever this archive contained might finally answer the question Thomas had raised, whether Zachary had played a role in his father's death. The truth was within reach, for better or worse. The desk phone's message light began blinking as files transferred to the secure computer built into Jasper's antique desk, a characteristic blend of old and new that had been his signature. A progress bar appeared on the small screen embedded in the wooden surface, counting up steadily, 23%, 37%, 58%. When it reached 100%, a simple notification appeared. Download complete, 1,457 files retrieved. Taking a deep breath, I opened the first file, Jasper's complete medical history, including records that had supposedly been lost during a system upgrade at his doctor's office 3 years ago. Scanning them quickly, I noted nothing, obviously, suspicious, though my medical knowledge was limited. The next set of files contained Jasper's personal email correspondence during his final months. Most were mundane business matters, family communications, or exchanges with old friends. But one thread caught my attention: messages between Jasper and Dr. Leonard Klein, his personal physician for over 30 years. Leonard, Jasper had written 6 months before his death. The symptoms have worsened despite the increased dosage. More concerning, I've noticed several pills missing from my prescription. I keep careful count, as you know. Someone has been tampering with my medication. Dr. Klein's reply was measured but concerned. "This is troubling, Jasper. Bring the remaining pills to our appointment tomorrow for testing. In the meantime, I'm sending a new prescription to a different pharmacy. Tell no one." My hands began to tremble as I opened subsequent messages. 2 weeks later, Jasper wrote again. Lab results confirmed substitution. Original medication replaced with similar-looking tablets containing compound that exacerbates cardiac symptoms. No accident or pharmacy error could explain this. Someone with medical knowledge and access to my personal items is deliberately worsening my condition. Dr. Klein's response was immediate. "This is criminal. We must contact authorities." But Jasper's final message in the thread revealed why he never did. "I know who's responsible, Leonard. The knowledge is destroying me more surely than any tampered medication. I need time to address this my way, to understand how it came to this. I've implemented safeguards to protect what matters most. Trust no one with my medical information going forward. And Leonard, my old friend, destroy this correspondence. Some truths are too dangerous to preserve." Dr. Klein had apparently complied with Jasper's request to delete their communications, but Jasper himself had preserved them here, in this secret archive only I could access. With growing dread, I opened the next file, Jasper's personal journal entries from the same period, digitized and encrypted. His words confirmed my worst fears. "Zachary has been systematically tampering with my heart medication for months. I've observed him on the security cameras I discreetly installed in my bathroom cabinet. My own son, deliberately exacerbating my condition, likely hoping for my early demise. The why is clear enough. With me gone, he believes he'll gain control of the company, access to my voting shares, freedom from my oversight. What he doesn't realize is that I've long anticipated this possibility and taken measures to ensure neither he nor anyone else can weaponize what I've built." Tears blurred my vision as I continued reading. Jasper had known. In his final months, he had lived with the knowledge that our son was slowly killing him. Yet he had said nothing to me, a final act of protection, sparing me from a truth he thought would break my heart. Instead of confronting Zachary directly, Jasper had channeled his energies into creating elaborate safeguards, the Swiss accounts, the Raven protocol, this digital archive, ensuring that even after his death, the truth would eventually emerge and Zachary would face consequences. The final journal entry, dated 3 days before his fatal heart attack, read simply, "All measures in place. Thea will find her way to the truth when she's ready. I trust her strength more than any security system I've ever designed. Forgive me, my love, for the pain this will cause. Some legacies aren't worth preserving." I closed the journal, my hands trembling with a potent mixture of grief and rage. The evidence was irrefutable. Zachary had hastened his father's death, committing the most profound betrayal imaginable. For what? Control? Money? Power that he hadn't earned and didn't deserve? In that moment of clarity, sitting in Jasper's chair surrounded by his belongings, I made my decision. The truth would not remain buried in this digital archive. Justice demanded light. Rising from the desk, I contacted Eleanor immediately. "I need you to arrange a private meeting with the federal prosecutor," I told her, my voice steadier than I expected. "There's new evidence regarding Zachary that must be submitted properly." "What kind of evidence?" she asked cautiously. "Evidence of a far more serious crime than we initially suspected. I'll explain everything when you get here." Within hours, Ravenhurst Manor became a hub of controlled activity. Federal agents arrived discreetly, led by a solemn prosecutor, who listened without interruption as I presented Jasper's records. Imogen appeared shortly thereafter, summoned by her superiors once the potential homicide angle emerged. "This changes everything," the prosecutor stated after reviewing the digital evidence. "If authenticated, these records support charges of first-degree murder, not just financial crimes." "They'll be authenticated," I assured him. Dr. Klein is still alive, though retired. He can corroborate the communications, and I'm certain his records will contain evidence he preserved despite Jasper's request to destroy it. Leonard was always meticulous. As the agents secured the digital archive for formal processing, Imogen approached me privately. "Are you all right?" she asked, genuine concern evident beneath her professional demeanor. "No," I answered honestly. "But I will be. Truth has a clarifying effect, even when it's painful." "Some would have buried this," she observed. "Protected family reputation above justice." I shook my head. That was never an option. Jasper deserved better, and frankly, so do I. That evening, after the officials departed with their evidence, Mina found me in the garden, seated on the stone bench where Jasper had proposed 67 years earlier. Without a word, she sat beside me and took my hand in hers. "So it's true," she said softly. "Zachary killed him." "He hastened an existing condition," I corrected, though the distinction felt meaningless. "Replaced medication with compounds that worsened Jasper's heart problems until his body couldn't fight anymore." "And Jasper knew?" "For months. He documented everything but told no one, not even me." My voice caught. "He spent his final days creating fail-safes instead of fighting for more time with us." Mina squeezed my hand. "Because he knew you would find the truth eventually. He trusted you to finish what he started." "Cold comfort," I murmured. We sat in silence as twilight settled over the gardens, transforming familiar shapes into mysterious shadows. Finally, Mina spoke again. "What happens now, Thea?" "Justice happens," I replied simply. "Zachary will face murder charges alongside his financial crimes. The evidence is overwhelming." "And the company? The family name?" I had considered this carefully. Blackwood Technologies will survive. The board is capable, and I'll ensure a smooth transition. As for the family name, perhaps it's time to let that legacy evolve beyond Zachary's actions. His children shouldn't bear his shame. 3 weeks later, I sat in a courthouse conference room opposite my son for the first time since his arrest. The table between us seemed impossibly wide, yet not nearly wide enough given the gulf his actions had created. Zachary looked diminished. In his prison jumpsuit, the arrogance drained from his posture. He couldn't meet my eyes at first. "Why did you request this meeting?" he finally asked, voice barely above a whisper. "The new charges have been filed. There's nothing to discuss." "I didn't come to negotiate," I clarified. "I came because I needed to ask you one question, face to face." He looked up then, wariness evident in his expression. "Why?" I asked simply. "Not the company, not the money. You could have inherited those eventually without resorting to this. Why did you kill your father?" Something flickered across his features, a ghost of emotion quickly suppressed. "Does it matter?" "The evidence speaks for itself." "It matters to me." He studied his hands, the silence stretching between us until I thought he might refuse to answer. Then, so quietly, I had to lean forward to hear. He knew. Knew what? Everything. Zachary's eyes, when they met mine, held a haunted quality. The deals with Krasnov, the embezzlement, all of it. I thought I was so clever, hiding my tracks, but he'd been monitoring me for years. He was building a case, planning to remove me from the company completely. Understanding dawned. "So you eliminated the threat." "I just wanted more time," he insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. "I thought if I could delay him, find what he knew and destroy it. I never meant for it to go so far." "Yet you replaced his medication systematically, over months. That wasn't impulse, Zachary. That was calculation." He had no answer for that. "Your children will be told you died in a private plane crash. I informed him, rising from my chair. A tragedy, but a clean one. They deserve that much protection from the truth, at least until they're grown. Mother, he began, but I cut him off with a raised hand. Goodbye, Zachary. I moved toward the door, then paused. Your father loved you until the end. Remember that, if nothing else. The trial proceeded swiftly, with Zachary ultimately accepting a plea deal that spared him the death penalty but guaranteed he would never again walk free. The press covered the sensational aspects enthusiastically at first, but public interest eventually waned as newer scandals emerged. Blackwood Technologies stabilized under Regina's leadership, with share prices recovering as client confidence returned. I fulfilled my 90-day advisory role, then stepped back completely, channeling my energies instead into establishing educational trusts for my grandchildren and funding medical research into cardiac care. Phoebe and the children remained at Ravenhurst temporarily before relocating to London, where her sister had connections in the art world. We spoke weekly by video call, and I visited them quarterly, a different kind of family relationship, more honest perhaps for being rebuilt from ashes. 6 months after Zachary's sentencing, I received an unexpected visitor at Ravenhurst. Imogen? Chen arrived unannounced one autumn afternoon, no longer in her practical nurse attire, but dressed in a tailored suit that suggested new professional directions. Agent Chen, I greeted her at the door. Or is it still Agent? Actually, it's Ms. Chen now, she replied with a small smile. I've left Interpol. Over tea in the conservatory, she explained her decision. After 20 years in undercover work, I found myself recalibrating. Your case made me realize I've spent my entire career observing other people's lives without building one of my own. And what will you do now? I inquired. Security consulting, she said, using my experience to help corporations protect themselves from threats like... She hesitated. Like my son, I finished for her. It's all right. I've made peace with naming the reality. She nodded gratefully. I came because I wanted to thank you. Your courage in pursuing the truth, regardless of personal cost, reminded me why I entered law enforcement in the first place. Truth is rarely comfortable, I observed, but living with lies exacts a greater toll in the end. After she departed, I walked through the manor's quiet rooms, touching familiar objects, greeting old memories. At 71, I had survived loss, betrayal, and revelation that might have shattered someone with less resilience. In Jasper's study, I opened the roll-top desk and retrieved a small leather box I'd discovered among his effects. Inside lay a single item, the mate to my jade earring, the one I'd surrendered to authorities as evidence. Its twin would remain, in a government evidence locker indefinitely, but this one was still mine. I held it to the light, admiring how the green stone caught the afternoon sun. No longer a security key, just a beautiful object with a complicated history. Much like the woman who now owned it alone. That evening, I sat at my desk and began writing a different kind of document than any I'd prepared before. Not a business proposal or financial statement, but a letter to my grandchildren, to be opened when they turned 21. It would tell the truth, a measured, compassionate version, but the truth nonetheless, about their family's history, its triumphs and failures. They deserved that legacy more than money or property. The understanding that wealth and power without integrity are meaningless, that family bonds can be both strongest and most fragile, and that even at 70, one is never too old to stand for what matters. I signed the letter, sealed it, and placed it in my safe. Then I poured myself a small measure of Jasper's favorite scotch and raised it in a silent toast to the years ahead. Fewer than those behind me, perhaps, but mine too. Live with clear eyes and an unburdened heart. My son had taken control of my finances after my 70th birthday, but he had missed more than just my Swiss bank accounts. He had missed the most valuable asset I possessed, the courage to face truth, whatever it might cost. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.